Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The CINIKRADIO podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio podcast. Here your host, Cinik.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Igrihe.
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
And this is episode 144 of the Cinik Radio podcast, and I'm your host, Cinik. And joining me, as always, three people who are probably going to re-gift fruitcake to me this Christmas, Igrihe, Ryan, and Kim. And on this week's show, we're in for another big one as we break down Chapter 14 of The Mandalorian, entitled The Tragedy, and 15, The Believer, because we are the Cinik Radio podcast. Like, listen, subscribe, but more importantly, his mama named him Grogu. I'm going to call him Grogu. Upon seeing the title of Chapter 14, IG, The Tragedy, did you know we were in for a rough one?
Yeah, and immediately I tried to go, well, maybe it's just going to be like when they were talking about the tragedy of Darth Plagueis or something like that they were going to lead into some other thing. I was hoping, because, nobody wants to see anything happen to Grogu. Nobody wants to see anything happen to the baby, and the truth of the matter is we all knew it was coming. This story cannot move if we don't head to something happening to the kid. It's got to happen. So I knew this was it, especially we need some kind of thing happening as we near the end of the season. We have to get an arc. So I knew it was going to happen, but I still held out a little hope. Maybe it's going to be something else. But yeah, I saw it. Saw the writing on the wall.
The show opens. They're in the Razor Crest. Din Djarin is playing with the child and his new amazing force abilities and kind of understanding him a little bit more. But then Kim, he starts lamenting. We're going to find that place. We're going to find these people. They're going to take good care of you. You're going to learn so much. Do you think he was talking to the kid for his benefit or as much as he was his own?
Yeah, it's kind of like he's projecting a little bit, definitely wanted to almost give himself a little sense of comfort, trying to reassure the kid who, may or may not be able to understand him anyhow. So, yeah, I think it was more or less just, kind of dual purpose. I think it was more or less for his own personal benefit, though. On
a side note, approaching middle age, I live for someone to look at me with as much love in their eyes as Grogu does that knob. I mean, #relationship goals. There has never been a greater love story throughout the galaxy than Grogu and that little round knob. Ryan, we discussed the breakneck pace of the season, but out of all the side quests, maybe we could have spent a little time on this journey. I mean, the planet Typhon is an old Republic Jedi gold mine of lore. Could we have seen more of it?
Yeah, but it would have felt a little out of place in the way that the show seems to want to move. For better or worse, and generally for better, the show is very linear in how it tells its story. So it's, very straightforward. I think it alludes to and nods at the lore and the extended universe, but it's doing it in a way that makes us have to then go, if we don't know about the lore, to then go on, Wiki or Wikipedia or go online or talk to friends and try to find out and research more information. But it's not really about, learning about the lore and staying in one place and building on that. It kind of gives us in little bits and pieces and then forces us to do the rest of the work. So, I've kind of given up expecting that. I think the one complaint of the show is that it moves too fast, and that it would be nice to just calm down and spend a little more time at each set piece and each episode. But that's not how the show works. So I guess I've kind of given up hoping for that. I'm sure we'll find out more about this planet, through other materials, through comics or books or, another show. But it's probably not going to happen during this show.
I agree. I just had a little bit of problem that they come into the atmosphere and they're right at the rock. I was just like, there was a few convenient things that happened during the course of the episode where I was like, all right, I'll suspend disbelief, but I'm not loving the fact that, it's a huge planet. And Oh, here we are. There's a rock. We'll just hop on our jetpack and fly over there.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with the show in general. Is like every place is like, go to this planet. Okay, he gets to the planet, and like, yeah, if we were like, okay, go to fly to Earth and go to Yellowstone, it wouldn't be that easy to find it. Like you have to stop, maybe ask some locals. But I guess we just kind of expect that maybe he can punch something into his into the system, or they gloss over the part where like they're able to ask some air traffic control how to get to certain places, but that's what the show wants to do. It wants to get from point A to point B super quick. Like it's like the anti Game of Thrones in that way. Just kind of learn to live with it. There are a lot of coincidences and conveniences in the show that I don't think they care, and for what it's worth, it doesn't affect the story all that much.
Doesn't. IG, the hunter and the child travel to the shrine with the windows down, and I see the advantages of having a jetpack at your disposal. But if you had one, would you ever walk again? Or would it be like, I need a Coke out of the fridge, and you just fly over to the fridge and then fly back to your seat? I mean, would it make us lazy?
And really, how hot does it burn? Like, that would be great, because like if you get real good with it, like you don't even need to go to the bathroom. You just burn the poop up like they do in the field in the military. Yeah, like why would you walk? Like, but they live in a world where they have like land speeders that float and everything, and speeder bikes. I don't understand like when he's walking through the damn. Even like earlier in the season when he's like he has two jetpacks, because he has Boba Fett's jetpack and his jetpack, and he was walking through the Tatooine desert. I'm like, dude, just fly over there. You've got two jetpacks. You can't make it work? Put the kid on one and you go on the other one and off you go. But yeah, jetpacks are awesome. And it seems like he doesn't ever come off and his feet are on fire or anything. So yeah, if that technology is coming, I'm on board. Although this is a long time ago, right? So where'd we lose the technology?
Kim, bigger surprise to you, the fact that Cinik was still alive after the double cross in season 1, or the Mandalorian was going to sit there and debate two very dangerous people over armor that no one cares about other than us Star Wars geeks that has in fact seen better days?
The fact that Cinik was still alive was, for me, I kind of expected it. It's one of those characters where I didn't feel like their story arc had really kind of come to full fruition yet. And it seemed a little premature when she was killed off the first time. I was kind of excited to see her come back, even though she might be, 40% droid now. I remember sitting there watching it and just thinking, just shut up, stop arguing. Like, just shut your trap, dude. There was some really great ahas in that particular episode that just kind of made me almost a little bit uncomfortable. But that's just, the show is just so amazing. So, for it to kind of resonate any kind of a reaction like that out of somebody just shows you just how well of a job that Jon Favreau and Rick, I can never pronounce his last name, but how well of a job that they're doing with producing these episodes, that it can kind of draw you in and almost take you out of your comfort zone with these kind of situations. It was great.
Ryan, as the Empire begins to descend on our heroes, we didn't get the battle that we wanted, but we got the team-up that we deserved. From Sarlacc to Sand People, seeing that guy in his iconic armor once again, do you think it'll renew interest for that long-rumored Fett origin film, or maybe even a TV show?
We got a lot of the Fett origin in Clone Wars. Granted, it was him as a kid, but we got some origin for him. What I will say is this: I know Fett is Ig's favorite character, one of my favorite characters because he looks so badass. But when you kind of look at what he's done in Star Wars, it's been fairly minimal, and that's kind of been a joke for the joke with him for a long time. But this was the best version of Boba Fett that we've ever seen. It's kind of like Vader in Rogue One. That minute or minute and a half of Vader in Rogue One was the coolest thing maybe I've ever seen in film, but the coolest Vader we've ever seen. This was the best Boba Fett we've ever seen, and that sold me on a show, because initially I didn't care for a Boba Fett show. It didn't really matter all that much to me. It's like kind of he was a character almost that benefited from his absence and just kind of being in spots. But that was awesome. And that was the best Boba Fett we've ever seen, and it was really fun to watch. He was badass. It was amazing to see him back with the armor on, legitimately with the armor. Sure, he put on a few pounds, but hey, yeah, he's an old man now, clearly feeding on the inside of a sarlacc. But that was awesome, and I'm in if there was like a Boba Fett origin or a movie, or even after he and Mando split, like let's see the adventures of Fennec and Boba Fett. I'm in for that.
Well, I was happy. I mean, the girls get Cara Dune. And we get Boba Fett. I'm glad that he found the chest plate stretcher from Game of Thrones and he was able to fit the armor on. Robert Baratheon would be proud. Listen, I want a bounty hunter that looks like me, and now Boba Fett looks like me, so I'm happy.
Before he put his armor on, he was beating up people with gaffy sticks. That was awesome. But once he put it on and he landed behind some people, I got strong robot chicken vibes going on because I just remember the Ewoks are celebrating on Endor and a Robot Chicken episode, and Fett lands behind him and he's like, here he is, Boba Fett, back from the dead. And he starts killing people and he's like, launching my long range missile, maybe. And the whole thing, I was just thinking of that. And then people, of course, must be on my same wavelength. It's been on YouTube. So go check it out. Look on YouTube for Boba Fett Robot Chicken, and you'll get both the actual Robot Chicken stuff and the new stuff, and it's hilarious. But I thought it right when it came out. I don't know if anybody else did, but I did.
Bubblegum and duct tape, IG. We debated the Razor Crest and its condition for weeks now. Could you hear Jeffrey Lebowski mutter those disbelieving words? Now they've done it. They finally killed my fucking ship as it was blown up from the sky by the Imperials.
Man, and I was getting really kind of attached to the ship. I mean, first of all, it's the only bathroom we've seen in Star Wars. It's right there in the open. It doesn't even have a door on it. And it just kind of fit his whole persona. It worked really well. And no warning, no nothing, just missile from the sky and it's done. It's gone. Now, in the same vein, we got Slave One back, which we hadn't seen Slave One since The Empire Strikes Back. So it's kind of a give and take, but I don't think, unless something happens to Boba Fett, that Mando's going to end up with Slave One. So if and when they get the kid back and they part ways and everything, is he going to just rent a tricycle to move around the galaxy, or what's he going to do? Because he's spent every last nickel he has to try and make things work and get to other Mandalorians, which means he doesn't have money to buy another ship. All the credits he gave to that guy on the planet when he landed off the platform, all that got him was some fishing line and a couple of nets.
Yeah, he hasn't exactly been keeping up on his paper route as he flies the child from place to place trying to find some place to dump him off.
Okay, so he's not good with money, but he's a pretty decent babysitter, right?
He's getting there. He actually gives a shit now. Before it was, I'll just give him to whoever wants to take him and hope that he's still there when I get back. One time he even left him outside the convenience mart with Jay and Silent Bob. Kim, the Dark Troopers descend and snatch Grogu and bring him up to the evil Moff that's waiting. He taunts the little guy with the Darksaber, and could he easily become the most hated villain in all Star Wars lore if he hurts that little fella? And do you believe that the child's in some actual danger this time?
I don't know if he's in danger because he had this look about him where he almost looked at Grogu like he was had some sort of affinity for him, like he was excited to see him, like there was a light that he didn't have to torture him or anything like that. They put him to sleep before they put handcuffs on him. They could have just done it while he was wide awake, like any other prisoner. So I feel like he's maybe a little bit more delicate with how he might be handling the situation. At least that's what I'm hoping, because yes, I absolutely believe that he would become like a super villain. This little Grogu has such a cult following already. It would just be like the storyline suicide to do something harmful to him. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that he would probably become a super villain. Also, when they were descending into that platform, which the platform to me looked just like one from Breath of the Wild. It's a Zelda game. Amazing. I was getting very Iron Man vibes as they were coming down to the ground with those little jet propulsion packs on their feet and stuff like that. And I just sat there and I was like, where are they drawing all of these ideas from? And I'm like, oh yeah, Marvel and Disney and this, that, and the other. So I'm like, come on, guys. We need a little bit more unique of some sci-fi stuff. Stop drawing up from what and let's go with something a little bit more unique, in my opinion.
Jon Favreau directed Iron Man. So
I know.
IG, do you think we missed a little bit of an opportunity with them maybe sending two up with the child and having Cinik and the Mandalorian fight two of the Dark Troopers? Or do you think that was too quick of a reveal?
considering that, like, the Dark Troopers, like, there was an older, and this really ages me, video game. It was a PC game called Dark Forces. And that's where the Dark Troopers came from. Like, and it's easily a 25-year-old game. And the game was awesome, but that's the first time you saw these guys, and they were hell to deal with in that game. So throwing some of these things at them would have been awesome to see. Like, basically all they did was fly down, pick up a kid, and fly back. They didn't do anything other than look menacing. They looked very menacing, but they didn't do anything. And I think they're saving it, like something's going to happen in the finale. And my guess, and this is just a spitball, is it's going to be a combination of the bounty hunters that are there, Fennec Shan, and a Jedi is going to show up with a lightsaber, because in the Dark Forces game, you got a lightsaber, and that's how you're able to defeat the guys. So I'm thinking a Jedi's going to show up, something's going to happen with a lightsaber, and we're going to get some more of that kind of action. I don't know who yet. I have a lot of theories, but I don't know who, but I think we're going to get some pretty epic battle. I'm hoping it's going to be a longer episode, like they're going to bookend with the longest episodes being the premiere of the season and the finale of the season.
I bet we go an hour easy. Ryan, looks like we're getting more Cara Dune and more Mayfield next episode. Your thought on the team up upcoming, the episode, and your rating?
The upcoming team up, I'm excited about. Mayfield, I love Bill Burr, and I think he does a great job with Mayfield. I love seeing Bill Burr with his Boston accent, in Star Wars, and so I'm glad that Mayfield, is up next. And yeah, it does look like, all of a sudden you have this kind of Avengers style like team up, because you still have Ahsoka out there. You've got Cara Dune, you have Mayfield, Boba Fett, Fennec. So all of a sudden there's a group that can possibly go out there and really try to get Grogu back. I really enjoyed this episode. I remember the previous episode before recording that Ig and I were talking and kind of like, how do you top this? Like, that's the only thing wrong with the Ahsoka episode was how do you top that? And in a lot of ways they did, and they didn't have to with this episode, because it's very much kind of a setup episode where we're kind of getting we're establishing what's going to happen in the last couple of episodes to finish out the season. So you could have just, to some extent phoned it in, but they really didn't. And it was like the moment that I saw the Slave One, I like marked out. It was like, oh my God, like we're really going to get Boba Fett. And then, they teased this confrontation, but it was pretty quick. And then all of a sudden we've got Boba Fett back in the armor. Grogu's captured. So that, they do a great job of kind of, tugging at our heartstrings with him getting captured, the destruction of the Razor Crest. It really is, Mando at his lowest point in the series, at this point. But there is hope, because he does have, Boba Fett on his side. He's gone to get Cara Dune. And then we do have this opportunity in the last two episodes to get a really, a team up, and for him to, clearly go back and rescue Grogu, which is where this, the kind of trajectory, we all kind of figured that would play into it. Like, our worst fear was Grogu being captured, and he is captured. To be fair, he looked pretty terrifying and powerful, albeit very little stamina. So that was kind of a fun little thing in the end to see just how evil Moff Gideon is, but also how powerful Grogu is. But he still, he can use the Force, and then he just gets exhausted doing it. So I really enjoyed the episode, almost as much as the Ahsoka episode, and I give it a 9.5.
Yeah, there was a long break in between, like, watching the show and whatnot. And so for me, it was kind of like watching it for the first time. We had a lot of things that were going on personally here, like moving and whatnot. And so there were, from last season to this one, we basically just sat down and then we started binge watching it. For me, I'm going to have to give it I'm probably going to have to give it a 9, but only because I felt like there was there's a lot of travel. There's a lot of just downtime for me. I know you guys kind of had the opposite opinion just a second ago, but like, for me, it's like very slow. And then when the action scenes come, or, they show us the Imperial, fortress, it's so short-lived to me. Like, I want more of that. Like, show me more of that stuff, like, I don't need to see 16 minutes of them just traveling from one place to another. I get it. It's a good time killer, but me personally, I want to see more of the meat and potatoes of what's going on and the creativity of it all. So I'm going to hold steady at a 9 this time.
Kim hated all 3 Lord of the Rings movies.
I did.
And the first 4 seasons of Game of
Even the
Thrones.
trees walking next to me.
All they did was walk. So this episode was great because my boy got to show up and be the bounty hunter that we'd all heard of, right? Why is he the highest regarded bounty hunter in the galaxy? Well, now we get to see why. First, he doesn't even have a firearm when he's fighting the first group of stormtroopers. He's beating them up with a stick. You know, it's like showing up to a gunfight with a knife and winning. That's not supposed to happen. But when you're Boba Fett, it works. Glances into the ship, takes a little side mission off, shows up, and literally takes them all out to the point where they're retreating. They're leaving, and he still kills all of them. That to me just kind of sells the whole episode because I got Boba Fett back in the armor. Yeah, the armor looked a little stretched out, little pokey, kind of sticking out of places because it doesn't fit like it used to. But I can't put on my pants from high school, so I mean, I get it. I understand. That being said, a lot of things going on in the episode. There's a lot of things to look forward to. Seeing Grogu at the end, like tossing stormtroopers around like they're rag dolls, just kind of made me giggle. But, you know, I'm afraid that they're going to do something to him that's going to lead to the demise of Moff Gideon. I'm not sure Gideon's going to make it through the end of this season, but they've already introduced or at least named another bad guy, so they've got a way to continue on. But I don't know, seeing him escape would be kind of cool too. That being said, I think I'm at a 9.5 for this episode too, because my boy got some redemption, and I'm on a roll with that. I love it. I love every second of it.
I agree. The episode was a lot of fun. It felt rushed, and there was a bunch of coincidences or convenient moments that I just shook my head at. But Boba Fett stole the show. On top of the fact that Djarin is really showing his attachment for the kid, which I love. I wanted more Typhon. We didn't get it. I can live with that. But we got some kick-ass moments, and I loved seeing the most underutilized character in all Star Wars lore, Boba Fett, finally show up and be the badass everybody knew that he could be. We needed that in the original film. I think he needs an origin film. And I love the team-up idea. Cinik is a great character, a total badass. I mean, R.I.P. Razor Crest. That broke my heart a little bit. But if that bastard hurts that child, I say we riot. I give the episode a 9. All right, and since we took last week off, we're playing a little bit of catch-up, and we're going to jump to Chapter 15, The Believer. And that opens with Mayfield working on a rebel prison camp on Carthon as they're breaking down strapped TIE fighters with those cool AT-AT converted cranes. Ryan, can you tell, based off of Mayfield's trust issues, that he's led a pretty hard life? I mean, do you believe people who do have deep-seated trust issues are kind of shady themselves in nature?
It gives you a sense. You go back to the episode he was in season 1, and how kind of obnoxious and bombastic he was, and I think his performance in this episode overall, not just including the beginning, kind of colors a little bit of that. It's like, you know, kind of that person who has led a hard life and does have some real issues that they need to work through, but instead of doing that, they kind of put up a facade. He does a great job in this episode of being a character who really does feel something and is struggling, and that person he was in the episode, even in this episode, there are points where it's like, yeah, that's the facade. That's him trying to kind of, talk through his issues when he really needs to kind of face them and deal with them.
If you have deep-seated trust issues and you aren't good with people, you just start a podcast. Kim, he sees Boba and jokes, "Oh, I thought you were that other guy." Then he sees Djarin, and his reaction is one of stun and shock and a little fear. He turns around and he looks back to where he was. Do you feel that he might have wanted to rather just go grab his torch, keep working on those TIE fighters rather than get on this ship to preserve his longevity?
You know, as super sarcastic as he is, I feel like he was kind of struggling with, where is he going to be safest? Where is it, protecting himself, not so much worried about anyone else. Him kind of taking that last little look over his shoulder and kind of seeing where he was and realizing that he's going to have to confront some things that it's coming from a very deep place of repression within him. And he's going to have to deal with that in a very short period of time. And that's going to be really tough for him. So I feel like, it was that moment of, do I stay in my comfort zone where I know what I'm doing. I have a routine and I'm okay, right? 3 hots and a cot, whatever. Or am I going to go forward and I'm this is the day I'm going to have to deal with this crap, and it's been, like I said, we're pressed for so long, and now it's going to have to just kind of steep out the top. And, I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, I might be a tad bit of a bad breaker-upper. And I might talk a little smack when my feelings get hurt. And there's been times where I've done that. And then 6 months to a year later, I get stuck with that person I may or may not have talked smack to, justifiably in my opinion. And it's super uncomfortable. So I understood what Mayfield was going through.
On the same vein, though, when he told him they took the kid and he's like, the little green guy? He seemed to jump on board pretty quick. I don't know. Maybe he's been playing mind tricks on people all over the place or something, because even if he doesn't interact with them all that much, everybody seems to have some kind of attachment to Grogu.
How could you not?
Which I get. Yeah, like he's the cutest kid in the universe. But, the fact that he's willing to jump on more voluntarily right after hearing that does speak volumes about his actual character, though.
I agree. IG, his backpack may have jets, but it didn't take long for Boba Fett to repaint his armor when he got it back. What did you feel about this fresh new look?
I want to know what AutoZone he went to get the cheapest rattle can spray paint he could get, because, man, like he took every shortcut available to repaint that armor, because it was just like, I know his armor before was kind of beat up and blaster shocked, and there was marks all over it and everything, but it kind of added to his allure. Getting that new paint job on it and everything, and it looked like it was cheap, like he had the worst paint available, and he's like, I don't care, I want it to be green again, so I'm gonna paint it, like, deal with it. And wow, I didn't know AutoZone was that far out, but I guess every third block here there is one, so there must be one out there.
I mean, it's not covered in dirt and rust yet, give it time. After a few battles, it'll look normal like it's supposed to.
But it was covered in dirt and rust, and he painted it.
I mean, it did look a little rough and probably smelled a bit like Cobb Vanth. So I think, that guy's wandering around Tatooine. I'm sure he got nice and sweaty and ripe in there. Probably cleaned it up, painted it. I can't blame the guy. Ryan, during the episode, Mayfield seemed to be the voice of reason as he pointed out rules, especially ones that are self-imposed, become a little bit morally flexible when times get tough, especially for Djarin. But did he also open up the idea that the Rebel-Imperial conflict is kind of a matter of perspective, who's evil and who's good?
That's something that always happens in Star, not that always happens in Star Wars, but I like when it does happen, because we usually get the bigger picture of the good versus evil, and generally it's from the perspective of the rebels or the resistance or whatever. For some, and this is just in general in the world, like there are some people that they're just trying to get by and they don't care about the larger picture, or not they don't care about the larger picture, but they're not as tied to one side or the other. They just want a decent life and they don't care who brings it. Or on the flip side, no matter who's in power, they get stepped on. And, it very much parallels our own world, where there are plenty of people who feel like, well, yeah, even in our political climate, like there are plenty of people like, look, I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat, either way, they're going to try to screw me over. So who cares? And, or it could be, different countries. And so he does a good job of kind of, planting those seeds and asking those questions, and especially when it comes to Din Djarin and his own philosophy and kind of the when is it okay to disobey his rules. I think he does a good job of pointing that out, and I think we're already in a position where he's questioning his own kind of practices. We've seen that throughout the season where there are Mandalorians who do take their helmets off. What does and so I think he's starting to question his own beliefs and systems. And yeah, I think Bill Burr or Mayfield does a good job of expressing that and kind of in his own, kind of condescending way, planting those seeds in Mando's head.
We got a really great Western / stagecoach robbery type fight, which was fought over top of some highly combustible rhodonium. And it kind of pointed out the shoddy craftsmanship of Imperial armor as Djarin kept taking hits and his armor kept falling apart. I mean, he won the fight, but did he chance blowing his cover? Because as a stormtrooper, he was actually shooting at stuff and hitting it, and he won the conflict. I mean, was anybody at the base supposed to believe that a stormtrooper did all that?
Right. And what was going through the minds of the individuals getting shot at that point? Like, what? We had a bro code, like, and you've ruined that. That was something that actually Matt had pointed out when we were watching it. And I was just trying to figure out, like, what are those tires made of on that thing? Because it was just like perfectly smooth. I mean, there was no, like, he's on top of this vessel and he's not being bounced around or nothing. I'm like, I need that. I need that on my car right now. And Matt's like, hello, pay attention here. It was kind of strange, that whole sequence to me, because, he takes that long, deep pause, and he's just laying there and like, I got to deal with this, like, fine. It's easy to take care of them because they suck at shooting. It's almost like you can tell, like, that's going through his head. It was an interesting little fight scene.
It was. And something interesting about it, though, was that you fight to your strengths, and his strength is right now is armor. And he gives him the ability to run out in the middle of stuff and take hits, and he's fine. But when he's in less sturdy armor, he was taking hits and actually taking damage. And it's like, oh, I need to rethink the way that I'm fighting this fight. So it was great to see him kind of switch it up and avoid the hits rather than run headlong into them. But we got a little bit of a juxtaposition, IG. I mean, our heroes were rescued by TIE fighters. Did you ever think that you would be cheering to see them show up to save the day and the celebration afterwards once they got into the mining camp?
Yeah, and surprisingly, I kind of was like feeling cheerful myself right with it. And it's like, here's all these imps and stormtroopers and everybody high-fiving and, butt slaps and everything all around. It's like, and I was feeling it. I was like, yeah, he got through it. Good job. TIE fighters came and saved the day. Yeah. And then like after the episode, I'm like, why am I cheering for TIE fighters? But, at the moment, I kind of thought about it. I'm not really cheering for the TIE fighters. I'm cheering that, like, Din Djarin and Mayfeld aren't having to climb out of a canyon from somewhere to try and get back up to get their mission done so they can go save the kid. So, look, all ends come to the right spot, right? It just because they saved the day for them that time, if it advances their mission and it keeps everybody together and doing the right thing, I'm for it. I don't care, good guy, bad guy, indifferent. Like, if you help meet us to the cause, it works. But you're right, like, they were able to make basically everybody cheer for the bad guys in this episode.
It does a great job of humanizing stormtroopers. That was one of the brilliant things of the episode is, like, the stormtroopers are always the bad guys, and they're just fodder for, or kind of cannon fodder for our heroes for the most part. And there was this moment where it made them human. Like, yeah, they're cheering. Of course they'd cheer. It's like, look at they got this little victory, after the Empire has been decimated. They've probably been handed defeat after defeat, and there's a victory, and they're happy, and yeah, they're excited, and they're pumped up. That's human. That's real. And I think, again, as you mentioned earlier, I think this episode did a great job of doing that, of bringing things down to a more human level and making us realize, like, yes, they're pretty much Nazis. So, not to give them much credit, but, like, there are human beings there, and they do have emotions. And so there is that part that's recognizable. So in that moment where our heroes are rescued by a couple of TIE fighters, and then, and then watch them to kind of be saluted and cheered by the stormtroopers, you can feel that. It feels real.
I mean, they did that with the clone troopers, and they did it with Finn in the next set of movies. But as somebody that doesn't get many wins in his life, my brothers in white, I see them take loss after loss and never hit anything with their guns. And I felt good for them to, even if it was just a little thing, like that one cookie left over out of the batch that somebody didn't eat on you. Maybe it was a little burnt, but you still got to dunk it in milk and it was just as sweet. And I was happy to see the stormtroopers get a little something back. Ryan, when the going gets tough, the tough abandon their moral code. Din Djarin takes his helmet off to use the terminal. How surprised were you that he did this? And will this put to rest all the backstage rumors we're hearing of conflict?
Yeah, those backstage rumors were way off, because they were like, yeah, halfway into the season, everything changes and it focuses on somebody else and blah, blah, blah. And like, yeah, no, I don't think I'm not buying that at this point. But yeah, so like we've talked about this a bunch over the, couple years now, that his character wears the mask or wears the helmet all the time. And so when it comes off, it's got to be earned. It has to feel important. And I think, again, just like last season it did, I think this does this, but kind of exponentially greater because he's doing it in front of people. They've done a great job of showing the growth in his feelings for Grogu. That at first he was just tasked with kind of, it's a cute little thing. All right, now he's tasked with finding a Jedi. I mean, he loves Grogu. I think they're as much as Grogu loves him and seems, it seems to be lost without him. I think he's the same. And like the episode before where he was kind of talking himself into, giving him up. I think it was very much a situation of him trying to convince himself that he has a mission and it's okay to give him up, but I don't think he wants to. And I think he really, really genuinely loves Grogu. And the fact, and this shows like how much does he love Grogu? He's willing to, abandon his code in front of Mayfield, who you just know Mayfield's going to give him shit for it. Like, that part of him is just thinking, oh, fuck. Like he's just going to, I don't want to hear what he has to say after this. But it was a really important moment. And like we've talked about before, like when Mando takes his mask off or takes the helmet off, it's got to be earned. It has to mean something. And I think in that moment it really did. And it works.
So are we just going to sleep on the fact that this whole big important moment, this entire, series so far, he has not removed his helmet. And then he does for the face scanner, and the face scanner just says, okay, yeah, here's the code for like our home ship. And there was no denial about that. Like if I don't even look at my phone the right way, it doesn't even unlock. So they're just gonna like give out the coordinates for this base like all willy-nilly. Like, come on, man.
I feel like the show does kind of just glance away at things like that. Like they tried to explain it away as in it's scanning for people who should not be in the system. Like, cause like that's where like Boba Fett was like, yeah, it's not, it's, they got my face on their system. And Fennec was like, yeah, they're going to get my face. And, so I think that was it. It was more of a situation of they were trying to explain it away as like, it's scanning, but it's really just scanning, like weeding out people rather than like scanning your face to say, oh, we know you, so it doesn't quite work. And I kind of had that same feeling of, this is kind of sketchy. Like why, wouldn't it be scanning a face to recognize the face?
That's how security systems work.
Yeah.
The people that are supposed to access the terminal are not, hey, you're not supposed to, so you're out.
Mayfeld physically, it tells him, I am, this is my ranking. Like I am a high ranking official and he is with me. And you would just freaking think that they have a database with these people's pictures in it, at least at minimum. I mean, I know they're bad shots and all, but like, is this how unorganized?
Yeah, they can send holograms throughout the galaxy of each other talking immediately, but they can't like put people's faces into a database.
Bingo.
And speaking of the faces of the database, probably the funniest line in any of the episodes so far came up in this one when Boba Fett says, let's say they might just recognize my face. And I thought that was the best line ever because there have got to still be stormtroopers running around that are clones of Jango Fett, right? There's probably like some old stormtroopers running around, and how soon we forget, because I saw no less than 5 different creators, because after episodes I go watch to see if anybody found an Easter egg I didn't see. And they're bringing up, and it's like, oh, yeah, because Boba Fett's been notorious for so long that they're going to recognize his face. And I'm like, no, he looks like every clone trooper that ever existed. It's not because he's Boba Fett. It's because there were literally 7 billion of them running around. They might know what he looks like.
Well, we got a really highly charged emotional moment, Kim, is putting yourself in Mayfield's shoes as you're drinking with the remorseless Valen Hess. The Imperial commander is basically just justifying killing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, including some of Mayfield's friends. Would you have let loose on him too?
Oh, for sure. I mean, just a despicable human. I mean, first of all, you had mentioned this earlier, but it gave me very Third Reich type vibes, like very Nazi, like, well, it's off, it's a great to good, And for me, I'm sitting there and I was admiring Bill Burr for how he kind of portrayed that moment, because you could see the emotion just written on his face without saying a word. And, when I first saw him introduced into this whole series, my first thought was he's a comedian. right? Like I didn't really take him seriously. There was not really anything about him except for, he's a comedian. Probably play a good sketchy character, probably going to flip flop a couple times, whatever. But in that moment, you're sitting across from him at that table and he's being told that it didn't matter that you lost everyone you love. It didn't matter that you lost everything you cared about. It didn't matter because it's all for this bigger plan that somebody else has. And just seeing like his face kind of well up with that anger and all that hurt and that turmoil that he has been deeply repressing for so long. He's been a prisoner. He's been, doing labor for what he's always thought was the enemy. And now he's got all of these things that are just kind of flooding back into him, and he pops. And I think it was a great moment. And then there's that awkward moment of silence between, him and the Mandalorian, where they're kind of like, oh crap, like that just happened. So what are we going to do now? Okay, well, let's just book it. I really thought that was such a great moment in this episode, and probably one of my favorites. And I got to applaud Mayfeld for having done such a phenomenal job with, illustrating that character with just wordless emotion. It was really, really good.
He acted his ass off, and I didn't see it coming. I could see it building in him, but I didn't think he was going to do it. And when he did it, I just went, oh shit. Like, they're in the center of this all. Where are they going to go? How are they going to get out now? Almost like Pedro Pascal's character thought the same thing I did. He just kind of looked at him like, you really just did that. We're in a tight spot here, fellas. IG, when you absolutely positively have to escape through a window and climb to the roof, is there better backup than Kara and Cinik? I mean, could these badasses have their own buddy comedy?
They can shoot. That's for sure. Neither one of them was a stormtrooper in a past life. That's absolutely for sure. And yeah, they're just standing up there just taking shots, and they had picked the right spot and the right vantage point, which is, I think, all part of the plan, because I think they were planning on like getting picked up on the roof or something at some point. But man, to be set up in the right spot as a sniper and being able to get good, clean shots and everything, that's got to be great, because it even looked like, unless they figured it out really quickly, the imps weren't going to be able to do anything about it. Like, we got to try and get these guys because they just shot our bro, but they went out through the window, so we got to go out through the window. There's no time to do something else. And yeah, that ended up badly for most of them. The one thing that I did notice is they missed opportunities for the Wilhelm scream, right? You shoot somebody in the back, they fall off into some moat in the bottom, and they didn't do the standard Star Wars everywhere else scream. But I'm willing to let that go because it was still pretty cool, right? And then Fennec and Kara talking up there about, all right, another one coming out. Yep, I got it. It works. Hey, that's, Fire Team 101 in the infantry is kind of cover me while I move. I got you covered, and like taking your shots and working as a team to get up to your objective. It was accurate. It was fun. And it didn't take too long. Like, they didn't spend like many minutes on it. They spent like a minute and a half, which is plenty of time to make it seem like hazardous and stressful, but not like just drag it out to where it's like, oh, this is getting old real fast.
Ryan, the escape went off without a hitch, and Mayfield showed his true colors. I mean, the redemption arc complete, striking back at the Empire and blowing up the chemicals. Were you surprised not only that he did that, but Mando and Kara kind of just released him on his own recognizances? And do you think he should have came with them?
Yeah, I'll answer the last question first. I do think he should have gone with them, and I kind of expected that. So it's kind of sad that he's on his own, because I think he's useful. He could shoot. They need all the kind of firepower that they can get when they go after Moff Gideon to rescue Grogu. It all built towards that. I love that sequence, with the, Boba Fett using the, whatever that was to destroy the TIE fighters. And, I love Mayfield, like having that opportunity and taking it out. And I think it was like, kind of the circle complete for him in this episode, where you really saw, like Burr did a phenomenal job. Like, I mean, he acted his ass off this episode. That was the release for him. And so really that moment worked really well.
The Moff standing on his ship almost victoriously. He's got the kid. Everything is going great in Moff world. And a hollow appears. It's the Djarin, and he's in all his glory. And he says, Moff Gideon, you have something I want. You may think you have some idea what you're in possession of, but you do not. Soon he will be back with me. He means more to me than you'll ever know. Kim, your thoughts on Mando turning the tables on Moff Gideon, the episode, and your rating?
I really liked it. I liked the fact that he just kind of solidified that, he's just a big old softy, but he means business, and that this is something that's very serious to him, and he's grown quite attached to him. At the end of the episode, when that little hologram pops up and he's like, he means more to me than you'll ever know. I'm like, oh, now he's allowing himself to kind of break outside of that hardcore shell, and he's letting him know, like, this is something you've messed with the wrong person. Like, this is something of importance to me, and I'm going to come for you. I'm going to get what's mine. I really liked it. It was probably one of my favorite episodes so far, and I'd have to give it a 9.5.
I'll start with some of my complaints about the episode, which are larger complaints about the show in general. Sometimes the logic can be a little sketchy, as we saw. The episodes can be too short, which it was. It feels sometimes a little video gamey, which it did. And Stormtrooper aim is very inconsistent, because while they can never shoot, they seem to be perfectly fine hitting Mando on the armor, and their aim was amazing when they crossed that bridge. It's like when they crossed the bridge, the Stormtroopers were there to help, and they shot those guys down with ease. So it's like, a little inconsistent, but I mean, those are kind of minor compared to just like so much good in the show. I really enjoyed the episode. I love Bill Burr as Mayfield. I kind of hope he gets, as they seem to be expanding the Mandalorian universe, I hope he gets to be in more of these shows, because he's just really great in the character. He acted his ass off. Like, he really showed some great acting chops. That sequence sitting down with Hess was really, moving, and with very little dialogue was able to kind of just go through a range of emotions, and you could tell he really felt, he felt disgusted by him. And it was kind of nice, that scene, because it allowed us, we cheered for the Empire for a moment, but then we realized, oh wait, no, they're still Nazis. Let's kill them all. But the action sequences were great. Whether it was there kind of trying to get back and escape the pirates, or the sequence inside was really good. Even that scene with Hess was just a great little scene of them sitting down, and the kind of tension that was built there was awesome. It's just really, loved everything about the episode, but the entire episode could have been dog shit. There could have been nothing redeemable about it, but that moment at the end where he gets on and says and says those lines to Moff Gideon, like I had goosebumps, because having watched the series a few times, like, those were Gideon's words at the end of episode 7, and the fact that he repeated it almost word for word with a couple little changes, but also just the emotion that you could feel in his voice, like, that did it for me. Like, that was one of the best lines, best scenes of the show. It showed amazing writing. That one moment is like, you back up as much money as you can for Favreau and Filoni and let them run this thing, because they know what the hell they're doing. Like, that was just amazing storytelling, amazing writing, an amazing moment. And again, the entire episode could have been shit, and I'd still give it a 9.5 for that one moment at the end. And it was an awesome episode, so I'm giving it a 10.
So speaking of that thing right at the end, I'm convinced that he has a recorder in his helmet so that he can play back things that happened in the past, and he sits down after things and writes things down on a notepad so that he can repeat words back to people. And he's done in the past, like when the guy, like when it's chasing him in season 1, is like, I can bring you in warm or cold. And he's like, that's my line. He only knows that because he recorded it so he could write it down. Ooh, that's a good line. I can bring you in warm or cold. This episode was great, and it was great large in part to Bill Burr, right? Bill Burr did what Bill Burr does, right? He talked a lot in this episode. And if you're going to put Bill Burr on, you kind of got to let him talk a lot, because that's what Bill Burr does. He's a professional talker. Like, most of his stuff isn't CGI or effects based. It's him and how he talks, and the fact that he was able to implore so much emotion and feeling and everything that he was doing, he just killed it this week. There was a lot of fun action. There were some really cool things going on. Like I said, the funniest thing I've heard in the whole series so far is no, I think they might recognize me from Boba Fett. I loved it. Redeploying the seismic charge at the end to blow up a couple of TIE fighters, loved that. But it still all pales in comparison to how Bill Burr did this week. So I think, as with episodes in the past, like we had Cara Dune last season, and he left her on that planet with all those people on the farm, came back and got her. I think you know where he's at. You let a guy go with no money, no guns, no nothing else on a planet that like you just basically took back from the Empire. He's going to be there for a little while. So if you need him, you know where to go get him. Like, he may not show up again this season, because there's only one episode left, but he'll be back next season. I think, they've made a Star Wars believer out of Bill Burr. I think he's had a lot of fun doing it, and he's seen the final product that comes out of Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. You get a good product. You get something that's fun to watch, and you get something that's fun for people that aren't Star Wars fans. So Bill Burr's a believer, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But I like the episode. It's not probably in my top 3, but it's still a pretty good episode, and I give it a 9.
Oh my God, boys and girls, the things just got real for me. I ended up standing up at the end of that episode and going, oh shit, as Moff Gideon, he basically bit off more than he can chew. It reminded me of Mel Gibson's speech in the movie Ransom. And the cocksure Moff has never been talked to by anybody like that. It was just such a great ending to this episode. The Believer had a little bit of everything that made this show great, from the cool opening shots of the Rebel junkyard to absolutely great character moments from Bill Burr. And by the way, did not want to do Star Wars, did not want to do this show. When Jon Favreau went to him, he said, I don't know, John, this is the type of stuff I make fun of. He said, no, Bill, I'm going to make you look like $1 million. I'll write you a good part. And he had. The previous appearances paid off in these moments, and he nailed it. Like, we're seeing the beginning of a great actor. Pedro Pascal was amazing in this episode. Glad we finally got to see him, because I've been yelling forever about him taking that damn helmet off. And the taunting and evil nature of Richard Brakes, who played the Night King on Game of Thrones. Valen Hess was just deplorable. It was great. The episode left me wondering about the Star Wars saga as a conflict, and the perspective of good and evil, and how it's determined by which side of the line you're on. Kind of reminded me a little bit of what they've been doing with Cobra Kai on Netflix. The fight choreography on the train robbery was great. Just so many good moments, so much great action. I'm going to go ahead and give The Believer a 10, and I can't wait for next week's finale.
And that's it. You made it to the end of another episode of the Cinik Radio podcast. I'm Igrihe, here with Cinik, who you can find at CINIKRADIO.com. Also, we had Ryan, who you can find at thejimwits.com, and Kim, who you can find at KMCArtworks.com. Great artists. Go check out some really cool stuff. We'll be back next week with some new stuff for you, probably some news as well. Send your crazy news stories, any comments, questions, and concerns to us at CINIKRADIO@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CINIKRADIO.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CINIKRADIO. Find us on Twitter at CINIKRADIO. And find us on Instagram at CINIKRADIO. You can also head over to tpublic.com, search for Cinik, CINIK, and get your own Cinik Radio podcast gear. T-shirts, mugs, cups, stickers, all the cool Cinik Radio podcast stuff you could possibly want. It'd help the show, and we would greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for all the love and support. Keep listening, sharing it with your friends, like, listen, and subscribe. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.